do you believe there are Jesuits infiltration in our church? And if so, to how much degree? And do you also have any stories to confirm that is a thing in our church today?
Okay, thank you. First of all, we know we've been under attack by Rome for a long time, and by the enemies in different ways. Worldliness, not just Rome, but worldliness, distraction from the love of God and love of the world, and if you're enemy of God. But specifically, let's focus on infiltration. Our universities, and I take advantage of this since we're talking about universities. I want to just give one illustration here because it's an experience. I graduated from nursing. I started with theology and then added nursing at Southern Adventist University, which used to be Southern Missionary College. When I went there, my granddad graduated there. My grandfather graduated from there, Southern Junior College. Okay, and I went to graduation from one of my nephews a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, 500 and something graduates. Wonderful, how nice. And then I went. Then another non-Adventist nephew invited me to his graduation at Liberty University. And so I went to Liberty University, Evangelical University, and I went to his graduation. Not 500 graduates, 50,000 graduates. 3 stadiums, morning, and a stadium was full of 6 graduation services in 3 stadiums in one day. And I started feeling very badly, and I said, Lord, man, we haven't thought big enough. I mean, we got such a good work to do. I've started 15 academies. Why didn't I start a university? Our young people, why do they have to go to the world to graduate and to study, to be missionaries? And God put this, but I can't, I'm too old to start a university. I can't do it. But God had something up his sleeve. And then a pastor friend of mine called me and he said, we just started up Madison University. And we're offering degrees through, our degrees are issued through Boston University and the University of Boston. And he said, we're offering in theology and in natural health. We have doctors, we have PhDs in theology. Everything is straight. And you know what? We have nearly 3,000 students right now. We jumped on board, we put it on our network, and we have English, we have Spanish, and we're just getting ready to start Portuguese. And it's exploding. It's going to have 10, 20, 30,000. And even though I'm not competing with Liberty University, but I tell you what, our young people need a place, and it's only on Sunday, 8 hours on Sunday, and then you have practicals, and you can get a bachelor's degree in theology, and we have a special theological degree for non-Adventists, and we have 300 evangelical pastors studying for their theology degree in our Adventist university. Anyway, the need for education is such a high influence on young people that the enemy started trying to infiltrate a long time ago, but they had to wait till Ellen G. White died, till before they were very successful, because she would always warn the presidents of this. And so, what has happened since then? Well, I only know of several. I've preached in most of our Adventist universities in the world. In Africa, I haven't preached in any Adventist universities, but in Asia, in Australia, in Europe, throughout Europe, in the United States, almost all our colleges and universities, I've had opportunities to speak in over the years. And I realize that all of them have come under attack. And Walter Fite told me that in one Adventist university where he went, one of the wives of one of the professors came to him and said, my husband is a 33 degree Mason, and he's a professor at this university. But he said, but in order to do that, to reach 33rd degree level, you have to sacrifice a child. She said, yes, he had me bear him a child which he sacrificed. And she said, our university is filled with Masons. Now, I don't know what he didn't tell me. I didn't ask him which university it was, but I do know that in Mexico we have Catholic priests on our seminary board, and they influence everything that they study. I do know that there are Masons in multiple universities, and I do know that our Adventist health system is also filled at high levels with the same, and that alcohol is served freely in many of the meetings in Australia from our Adventist health systems, and now my personal testimony is that when I met with the GC secretary, my wife and I, and the vice president, the first thing that was on the vice president's agenda was to complain that I had said that there were Jesuits working at the General Conference. I said, but I have never said that. Yes, you did. But I don't believe that. I said, I have a different version. No, that's what you said. But if I don't believe it, I don't believe I said that. No, I have the DVD right here, he said. I have the DVD. It came from the Ukraine. You said that in the Ukraine. No, in the Ukraine, I said something else. No, that's what you said. I said, okay, sir, let me write down, let me quote you, because I am going to quote you, and I'm going to prove that you're wrong. What did you say that I said? Because I'm going to write down every word. And he said, well, how do I know? I didn't hear it myself. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You don't know what I said. And he said, I was told. Yes, you were told. Let me tell you what I did say. I said we're under attack by the Jesuits at every level, from the bottom all the way to the General Conference. He said, that's not true. We're not under attack by the Jesuits. They're our friends and advisors.
that's
Oh, wow.
What an admission.
That's what I'm talking about. If the Jesuits are your friend and advisors and you're a vice president of the General Conference, that's the influence. Or don't you know that the Jesuits are sworn enemies of Protestantism? Are you not aware? Surely after more than 20 years as vice president,
You will know that.
you will not be naive or ignorant. Surely you know. And if you know, and I know you do, then you know what? I just realized something. I can't call you pastor anymore.
Wow.
You're a traitor. Because the enemies of the church are attacking us, and you have to open the door to them, and they're your friends and counselors. And now I know where this is coming from. It's coming through your friends. I'm sorry. I can't call you pastor anymore. Forgive me. But I already, in South America, I'm aware of missionaries that have been killed and chopped in pieces by machetes. I'm aware that of Christians, Adventists that have been drowned by Catholic priests. I'm aware of real severe persecution and death. And then you come to me and say they're your friends. Then you're just as guilty as they are. I'm sorry.
Mercy.
From now on, I'm going to call you by your first name. And in Latin America, we're always respectful. We never call anybody by their first name. In Spanish, you would never tell Ted Wilson, Ted, how are you doing? You would never do that. He's the senior officer. You would always say elder or pastor.
Yes.
In Europe, they don't say pastor too much. They just say brother to everybody. But in Latin America, you never address somebody by their first name. You always use the formal mode.
Correct.
And I'm a Latin American. I grew up in Latin America. But I said, I can't call you formally anymore because you have invited the enemy inside. And I thought you were protecting us, but you've sold us down the river. And then I said, let's not talk about it because I'll get too angry. Because I've been invited to Jesuit meetings in Guyana. I've been threatened by Jesuits who said they were going to kill me. I've been going to, and then you come here and say they're your friends.
Mercy.
I'm sorry. The first two pastors that ever went to Spain, Adventist pastors, were invited by their Jesuit neighbor to supper, and they died that night. They were poisoned.
Oh.
And I said, and you come and tell me don't you know the oath that they take? And so I said, I'm sorry, but it came from his mouth. My wife was there, and he himself told us that they were his friends. And so I do know that I don't believe that our pastors are Jesuits.
No.
To be a Jesuit, you have to go to their schools, study theology, take all the oath, go through all the Catholic rituals and everything to be a Jesuit.
Yeah.
So I don't believe that our pastors are Jesuits, but they're under Jesuit influence, many of them.
Correct.
And many of them have opened the door. Many of them have opened the door to friendships. And I don't know if there's financial remuneration. All I know is that in Masonry, and these guys have a lot of money, and in the Jesuits, they buy people. They buy and sell the souls of men. And the Bible, Revelation says they dealt with, buy and sell souls of men.
Mercy.
So many people are for sale. If we have a price, the devil's going to find it.
It's disturbing.
So that's a personal testimony from the vice president of the General Conference. And I happen to know that at St. Louis, at the last General Conference that I went to there, and it was, I think it was 2000 or 95, 2000, the Jesuits came in and prayed for the General Conference nominating committee before they made their decisions. Why are we inviting Catholic priests to come and pray for our nominating committee? What do they have to do with our nominations?
I know that's I don't know. They don't invite us to their church to pray for them.
No. One more
like
experience, since you're asking for experience.
Yes, please.
I have a friend of mine has been a professor of theology at Andrews University for many years, and his wife finished a PhD and was invited to teach at Loyola University in Washington, D.C. She said, I can't go to Washington, D.C. We live in Michigan. And my husband is a professor here. I can't work for Loyola University being separate from my husband. And they said, oh, don't worry. We'll make arrangements. And they called the General Conference. And a few days later, the General Conference passed a call to her husband to be to work at the General Conference.
Just like that.
Just like that. One phone call away from the president of Loyola, and the General Conference says, yes, sir.
That's influence.
That's influence. And now they're up there, and she's teaching at Loyola University.
Oh, mercy.
So
I want to say thank you for those two experiences. It's massive, but I can certainly feel that way. So I'm glad you also clarified we have Jesuit influence. And one of the things you said from the start is the attack on the spirit of prophecy is one of those main influence. And you've also shared in an older video before, I've seen this years ago, where you said there were Jesuits who'd even been reading the spirit of prophecy in their homes.
That's another interesting story. They've read everything.
They've read everything.
And a Mexican...
But they're making sure we don't read the books.
Yeah. A Mexican physician friend of mine had a Jesuit bishop send his servant to his house and said, I have cancer. The bishop has cancer. He knows the Adventist health message, and he wants to be treated by you. And so the physician said, I am willing if he will allow me to give Bible studies to him after he is healed. So the bishop agreed. So the Adventist doctor went to his house and started treating him. And on one of those visits, the bishop took him upstairs and said, I want to show you something. And he opened up his cabinet, and there was every published writing of Ellen G. White.
Wow.
And he said, I've read every one. I bet you haven't. I'm a Jesuit.
That's scary.
And we are very, very aware, and we believe that Ellen White was definitely a prophet of God. But we do not want Adventists to read these books. And we do everything possible to keep them from reading, because she knew every plan that we are planning, and she knows the future, and we don't want Adventists to know what she wrote. So we do our best to oppose these writings so that Adventists will remain in the dark. So, yes, they read more than we do.
I believe that story because we actually living it. We are seeing there's an attack on the spirit of prophecy. It's almost like every time somebody either leaves the church or apostatizes, their first attack is against the spirit of prophecy. It's like a pattern, and they start attacking other teachings too, like the investigative judgment. It's just an amazing pattern when you watch how that goes. But it's interesting that Jesuits have been reading our books, but we are being encouraged not to read the books.